What's up, guys? We're back. Boom breakdown coming right here. UFC Minneapolis coming up. We got Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos. Big fight in the heavyweight division. This fight has a lot of significance to it as far as who's going to lead themselves into a title shot next. Most likely the winner of this fight will fight the winner of Stipe and DC, unless they try to make a DC Jones trilogy fight, whether that be at heavyweight or light heavyweight. That might mix up things here, but this is a banger of a fight, man. Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, both guys throwing big power on the feet, and we got a fucking boomachino, baby. Chill. This is a scary fight. I really feel like this is a potential knockout early. I don't think Junior Dos Santos is going to shy away from the striking. He said it in his interviews that he's like, listen, I don't want to go where the fight is safe. I want to win the fight. I want to take it to him. And that could be good. That could be bad, because Francis is, in my opinion, he's a little bit more powerful. And he has a little bit more devastating knockout ability. And Francis has learned from his past fights. You know, he had that terrible performance against Stipe Miocic where he got shut down and he had to come back from that mentally. And that was really tough, you know. It's not easy to come back and get yourself psychologically right for the next fight, where you want to pull the trigger and you want to perform well, but you also don't want to gas out because you know what that feeling was like last time. So, you know, that makes things difficult. But he bounced back, had a better performance, and then, that Derek Lewis fight too was very lackluster, so he had to deal with that as well. But then he knocks out Cain Velasquez, so he kind of made up for all that bullshit, and now here he is fighting Junior Dos Santos, who looked good as of late, had a good performance in his last fight. Who did he fight last, Junior Dos Santos? He fought, I forget who his last fight was against, but I know he won the fight. He fought Derek Lewis. Yeah, and he won by TKO round 2. Which, taking out Derek Lewis is no easy task. So that was definitely a big win for him. But they both have a common opponent in Derek Lewis. But Francis Ngannou seems to be confident these days, after coming back from that. And Junior Dos Santos is, dealing with a guy who he has to be a little bit smarter in this fight, I feel like. Utilize his wrestling to his jiu-jitsu if he can. Try to press Ngannou up against the cage. And even if he doesn't want to get a takedown, at least threaten it and try to tire him out a little bit. Get him thinking about that Stipe fight. If you're going to exploit someone's weaknesses, you got to understand. Look at his past. Look at how he reacts to a fight where he has to grind and try to get up and deal with a wrestler. Now, obviously, JDS isn't the same kind of wrestler as Stipe Miocic, but he has ability to grind a little bit. He definitely has the jiu-jitsu. He has decent takedowns. He's not terrible there, but it's just not his forte. If I'm Junior Dos Santos, I'm pushing Ngannou back as hard as that is. Try to get him against the cage. Try to at least threaten the legs. Get on him. Press him against the cage. Make him work off the cage. Make him work to defend some takedowns. And then start landing some strikes from there. And Ngannou obviously is going to come out and try to land something heavy early, I feel. And in this fight, I think that JDS is going to get a little stubborn. I think he's going to try to just exchange and strike, more intelligently, not just brawl. I think he'll stay on the outside and try to use his speed and his, diverse attacks. But I think Francis is going to catch him, man. I think he's got speed. He's got killer fucking power. And am I allowed to curse on this podcast? Oh, yeah, it's my fucking podcast. Boom! Yeah, so I'm going Francis by knockout. I think he's going to get it done early. He's riding off that wave of confidence against Cain Velasquez. I'm going Francis KO early. Jussier Formiga versus Joseph Benavidez. Big fight in the flyweight division here. And this has big implications. These guys are fighting for a number 1 contender spot to take on Henry Cejudo for his flyweight title. Now, easier said than done, right? You win this fight, whether or not you win it by devastating fashion, and Joseph Benavidez has a win over Formiga already. This guy's dealing with a situation where he's fighting a guy he's already beat to defend his #1 contender spot, and then if he wins, he fights a guy for a title who he already beat. Now that's a little bit more exciting for him because he wins a title, but this, it's hard to get up for a fight when you've already knocked the guy out, and now you got to do a better job. So Benavidez, Formiga, and Formiga's made a lot of improvements since that fight. He's definitely more confident with his striking in the last fights he's had, and he's finishing guys. He's got a nasty rear naked choke. He's got really high level skills on the ground. Benavidez, though, a very high-level wrestler. I think it's going to be tough to get the fight down to the ground. I think it'll primarily be a striking fight, which I give the edge a little bit to Benavidez with power and his ability to switch stances and move in and out and close the distance with those big hooks. Formiga, though, is no slouch on the feet. He's looked really fast and crisp as of late. I just don't think he has the power to hurt Benavidez necessarily. And to, with a lot of Formiga's fights, he hurts guys on the feet and they drop, and then he gets them on the ground and he starts, utilizing his jiu-jitsu skills while the guy's kind of rocked already. But I don't see that in this fight. But yeah, one of these guys is going to line themselves up for Henry Cejudo. I like how Benavidez is taking that approach towards Henry. Like, listen, you got to come and beat me. I already beat you, so I'm the fight. I'm the guy that you want to fight next if you want to keep your legacy, because you want to defend your belt and you want to erase that loss that I already gave you. I think that's a good approach, although I do think that Benavidez is probably the least he's not the biggest fight for Henry Cejudo next. You got guys like Dominick Cruz, Aljamain Sterling waiting to see who comes out as the #1 contender. You guys got Peter Yan making a come up. He's a little bit behind, I feel. I think the UFC is gonna kind of see where Cruz is at with his recovery, because he's probably the biggest fight you can make name-wise for Henry Cejudo at bantamweight. But Henry Cejudo had the shoulder surgery, so he's out for a while. Peter Yan just had elbow surgery, so maybe this is all good for Aljo. We'll see if timing works out where Henry comes back and he's available to defend the belt, or if Cruz is ready to go. I feel like that's the route that they'll go, because business is business, and Cruz is a UFC employee. He's obviously in the good graces of the family, so Uncle Dana's gonna probably look to go that route. I feel if Henry decides to defend the bantamweight title first. If he decides to go flyweight, which I don't know if that's the route that he'll go first, because Henry's obviously looking for the biggest money fight available. That's what champions do. He's got all the power now. He's calling out Lomachenko and trying to make boxing fights. He's taking on that Conor McGregor route where you just look for the biggest fight possible to build your legacy further and further and to build your star power. So I feel bad for guys that earn their shots, that are, #1 contenders, legitimate guys that deserve to get the next shot. We don't know which route Henry's going to go. But Benavidez, Formiga, I'm going with Benavidez. I think it's going to be a decision. I don't think either guy's going to get a finish here. They've faced each other before, so with that said, you know what to look for a little bit. I know that was a little while back, but at least some familiarities with the last time you guys fought and the style that you're going against. Formiga's made improvements. Benavidez has made improvements. But I think these guys are closer matched than they were back in the past, and I think that the fight will go the distance. But I think that Benavidez will have the wrestling advantage as well as the striking advantage to dictate where the fight stays, and I'm going with Benavidez. You got Demian Maia versus Rocco Martin, who's looked fucking hot as of late, man, taking out big top 10 guys. Knocked out Ryan LaFleur, which was a big win. And then he went on to win another fight, too, after that. Who did he face after LaFleur? Sergio Moraes. He had a good fight, very competitive fight, but he had a decision victory, which I don't know if that was a really clear-cut victory, but now he's fighting Demian Maia, who seems to be the gatekeeper for this division, where they really are trying to see where guys stack up in the division, using Demian Maia to see if they're title ready or whatnot. So that's a good opportunity, knowing that, for Anthony Martin to make his stay in the division. If you could take out a guy like Demian Maia with very high level jiu-jitsu skills, that makes a big statement. And Rocco Martin's riding a lot of momentum right now, and he's a high level black belt on the ground too. So I feel like in this fight, it's a decent style matchup for him because I give the striking ability to him. And Demian Maia is not the best wrestler. If he gets clinched up with you, he gives a lot of guys fits with trips and takedowns off the cage. But if you could just stay off the cage and try to stuff his takedowns and keep the fight standing, I think Rocco Martin is going to get the job done. I think he'll be able to hurt Demian Maia at some point on the feet. Maybe a head kick. His head kicks look really good as of late with his setups. And, I think he'll be able to negate the ground game. I don't think it's going to end up there. If it does, I think he's good enough to deal with it at least. Obviously, Demian Maia is world class on the ground, so I'd give him the edge. But we are dealing with two black belts here, so I'm going to go with Rocco Martin. I think he's going to get a decision. I think he'll hurt Demian Maia on the feet and take over from there and just kind of, weather the storm early for the takedowns and be able to get the decision victory. Moving down the card, we'll make some quick picks. We got Roosevelt Roberts undefeated against Vince Pichel. Vince Pichel's a very aggressive fighter, but I think he lost to, who did he lose to last? Was it Gregor that he fought? Who did he fight last? Yeah, Gregor Gillespie, who's a fucking tank at 155. The guy's wrestling is devastating. Tough fight for anybody. So yeah, Vince Pichel lost by submission to him. Now you're fighting an undefeated guy in Roosevelt Roberts, who has a lot of confidence as well. Having been unbeaten, sometimes that could be powerful, sometimes that could be a problem. But most guys that are undefeated, they just feel invincible. That nobody could beat them. So that's a powerful thing. And he's coming off a win against Thomas Gifford, who was hanging in there in a really tough fight, taking a lot of damage. But that was a newcomer making his debut, so a little bit different of a fight. Vince Pichel, a little bit more UFC experience. But yeah, I got to go with the undefeated guy, Roosevelt Roberts, who seemed very quick on the feet and very precise with his striking. Going with Roosevelt Roberts, I think he's going to get the job done by a TKO. I think this fight will be an aggressive back and forth, though, because Vince Pichel is he's a mean fighter, man. He gets in there and exchanges. Moving down, we got Drew Dober versus Marco Pollo Reyes. Marco Polo. Yeah, Reyes is a good fighter, but he's 8-5. Drew Dober a lot more experience in the UFC. He's 20-9, and he's a big guy for the weight class, thick and stocky, a little bit more powerful. Polo Reyes will probably have a little bit height and reach advantage in this fight, but I'm gonna go with Drew Dober. I think Drew Dober is gonna get a I think he'll get a knockout in this fight. He's a southpaw, I believe. Hard style to fight. Good wrestler. Strong for the weight class. Did he already fight Pollo Reyes? Huh. Oh, no, that's somebody else here. Yeah. Well, Pollo Reyes is coming off of a knockout loss, too. And sometimes, that plays a role in your performance. So we'll see if he comes out confident or if that affects him in any way. But I'm going with Drew Dober. He has a little bit more power. He's only at a 1-inch reach of disadvantage, so that's nothing really. So yeah, he's not gonna have to deal with too much with that. But Drew Dober's coming off a loss to Beneil Dariush, who's been at the top of the division for quite some time. So that's nothing to be ashamed of, losing by submission to high-level black belt Beneil Dariush. But Pollo Reyes is a much different fighter with a lot less experience. So yeah, I'm going Drew Dober. I think he's going to get a second or third round TKO stoppage. Moving down the card we go. And also I'm going to get to some Twitter questions, some fan questions. We only got a couple. But yeah, we're just doing a little quick breakdown here. Alonzo Menifield versus Paul Craig. This is an interesting style matchup, man. And Alonzo Menifield packing a lot of power. This guy's big too for the weight class. Paul Craig has got some slick submissions off his back, and he's got some late finishes, man. This guy pulls out some crazy triangles with like a minute left in the fight. which is really exciting to see. Benavidez is an undefeated fighter at light heavyweight, and he's coming off a big KO knockout against Vinicius Moreira. I believe I was at that fight. That guy has some power, man. He was hurting that guy before he hit that knockout, which was in round 1 towards the end of the round. But he has some power, man. I remember thinking, very athletic guy for light heavyweight, scary power. And Paul Craig's definitely going to want this fight on the ground at some point. Paul Craig's coming off a submission victory with 40 seconds left in round 3. And he's one of those guys, man. You can't count him out because he's dangerous. Whether he's losing the fight, whether it's looking bad for him, and it's the end of the fight, the end of the round, he'll throw up submissions. He'll take risks, and that's always dangerous to go against. So Benavidez wants to keep the fight standing, stay away from that jiu-jitsu game of Paul Craig, and just kind of keep the fight on the feet and land those power strikes, which I think he'll be able to do because Paul Craig will keep the fight striking for a little while. It's not like he's got crazy high-level wrestling, but he's really slick off his back. But that's against guys that are willing to take him down or go to the ground with him. I don't think Alonzo Benavidez is that guy. I'm going with Benavidez by KO, round 1 or 2. We'll move down to the prelims, and we will make some quick picks here. Ricardo Ramos, Journey Newson. I'm going with Ricardo Ramos. I believe Newson is making his debut here. He's stepping in short notice. I believe Ricardo Ramos was supposed to fight Sergio Pettis, which was a much more interesting fight to see. So, yeah, I go Ricardo Ramos by decision. Eric Anders, Vinicius Moreira, who I just mentioned before, who was knocked out by Benavidez last fight. Eric Anders packs power. He's fighting at light heavyweight again, which he's a middleweight and a light heavyweight, but he looks good at light heavyweight. You know, he had a really good performance his last fight. Really tough fight, style matchup, but I'm going with Eric Anders by KO. Jared Gordon, who defies all odds against Dan Moret. I'm going with Jared Gordon by second round TKO. This guy's a killer, got great cardio, and very hard to finish. Dalsha Lungiambula, hard to pronounce that name, against another hard name, Daquan Townsend, a little easier. But I'm going to go with Dalsha by knockout, light heavyweight division. We got Emily Whitmire versus Amanda Ribas. I'm going to go with Amanda Ribas decision. Maurice Green from The Ultimate Fighter, dealing with a lot of alcoholism, and hopefully he's doing the right things, being healthy. He's fighting Junior Albini, the fucking diaper connoisseur. I'm going to go with Maurice Green by knockout. And this fight was scrapped. Jordan Griffin versus Vince Murdoch. I was actually excited to see Murdoch's debut, but this fight got scrapped. So no longer on the card. And yeah, let's get to a couple Twitter questions, and then we'll get on out of here for a quick little Minneapolis breakdown. UFC on ESPN. From Brandon Schwab. Not Brendan Schaub. Brandon Schwab at JesseJess1Fan on Twitter. Who do you see winning, JDS and Francis? They'll go on to face DC or Stipe most likely. So second question, who wins between DC and Stipe? Well, I'll talk about DC and Stipe because I already went over the JDS and Francis fight, but I got Francis in that fight. I said KO. DC and Stipe, interesting fight because DC obviously knocked him out, and you can't really do much better than that. And I think Stipe is going to come into this fight motivated to get redemption. And, style-wise, I see DC as the better fighter as far as well-roundedness, wrestling, striking, jiu-jitsu, everything. But it's a tough matchup, man. He's coming off a knockout victory over this guy who he already took out quick and easy, and now he's going to have to face him more motivated Stipe, who's probably going to fight a little bit smarter and stay out of that clinch where he can get caught. And I think Stipe is going to do a lot better in this fight. but I still think that DC is going to be able to grind out a decision victory just based off of his wrestling pedigree. I think that the fight will start, with some striking exchanges, but I think ultimately DC is going to want to close the distance and get into wrestling exchanges, which Stipe is a great wrestler himself. It's going to be hard to take him down, but I think DC could take anybody down pretty much except for John Jones, these days. So I think DC will be able to grind it out. I think he'll pressure him against the cage a little bit more in this fight as the rounds go on. The striking will be a little bit more even. I don't think Stipe is going to get hung up in the clinch and get caught again. I think the fight will go the distance, and I think DC will edge out a decision victory. Let's see if we got any more questions. Yeah, so this card's not a crazy stacked card, but decent, Yeah, I think that's it, man. We only got one fucking question. We need some more questions. We need some more fans engaging in this. Where are you guys? Where's the boomerangs at? Where's the boom fans at? Boom time, baby. Yeah, so we'll get this up on YouTube. And then we'll be back. Maybe we'll recap this show a little bit, or we'll get on to the next show. We got International Fight Week coming up. That's going to be awesome with John Jones and Santos. A lot of great fights on that card. That's the big card right there. July 6th, I believe, in Vegas. Give me a follow on Instagram, Twitter, at BrianBoom135. I got new music coming out on Spotify. If you search Boom, you'll find it. Boom breakdowns coming out. I'd like to do this more often, have some more back and forth live podcasts with whoever is interested out there. You want to do some, fight picks, some fight card breakdowns, some, just live chats, whatever, current events. I'm down for that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you can give a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I really appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Boom.